And now joining us in the studio, Dave Miller, Senior Manager Media Relations at Spire, and joining us via phone, Jim Richmond, Vice President Corporate Communications and Marketing, also from Spire. So, good morning, gentlemen, first of all.
Good morning.
Good morning. Great to be with you.
Thanks for coming on. So, you guys just been racking up some awards here lately, and we wanted to have you on to talk about that. And for the benefit of our audience, as a crow flies, your headquarters is probably only about 3 miles away from here, and another mile or so is my house. So, really quite an asset in the state of Mississippi is the company, Spire. And you guys employ a lot of folks, treat them well, and the market has certainly recognized that on a national basis. So, first, Jim, or whichever, Jim or Dave, just tell us about this Best Place to Work designation you just received.
Well, let me state first a sentence or two about it, and then Dave, I'll let you talk a little bit about the two awards that we were recognized with. I think it's important really just to state kind of on the front end that, we don't, as a company, really get too hung up on awards. In other words, we don't spend a lot of time trying to chase the awards. But it really is important to us, though, just because of the fact that it does really signify the success, that we've had in with our goal of building a team of highly experienced and results-oriented employees. So, and it's this tech culture environment, and like you said, it's right here in our region, right here in Mississippi, in your backyard. So, Dave, why don't you just talk just a minute about the two awards that we won, and then we can keep answering some questions.
Sure. So the first one is really from Forbes magazine and from Statista Inc., and that's where they basically went all over the country. They interviewed, they surveyed actually employees from all over the country, all over the U.S., and they named Spire as one of the top mid-sized employers for 2021 in the U.S., not just in Mississippi, not just in the Southeast, but in the entire U.S. So that's a pretty big deal. Again, as Jim said, we don't go out seeking these awards, but it's nice to have that outside verified third-party recognition that what we're doing, some of the things we're doing here, we're doing them right.
Yeah.
And then the other award is from TMCnet, and that's really, to me, that's really about who we are as a company, that we hire employees, we go out and recruit employees that have an interest, that have a desire, that have knowledge, skills, and abilities in the tech sector, and they bring those KSAs, if you will, to Spire, and they're able to flourish in this kind of environment where the company is so tech-centered and really wants to use technology not just to provide great products and services, but to improve the quality of life in Mississippi. That's a big thing for Spire.
Yeah, and it it's consistent with any good corporate culture and any good corporate governance. Is recognizing that you obviously have to make a profit. You have to produce a profit to pay people and hire people and expand and grow. I mean, that's just economics 101. But when you serve people and you serve the broader communities and you're providing value, that's the main thing. You're providing value. The market rewards you for that, and you're able to reward your people and take care of your customers. It's a pretty simple formula, really, and I don't know why people struggle sometimes to understand. I used to say adventure. Well, it's real easy. We take care of our people, they take care of our customers, and that takes care of the company. It's a pretty simple formula at the end of the day.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on that, and I think the way that we try to approach business, obviously we're very driven from a success and just growth standpoint, but the way we approach business, I think it really gives an opportunity to these technically minded employees to really feel like they're rewarded. I mean, a good example is we are very project driven, across the course of our face of the company. I mean, we could have hundreds of projects that we're, that we're driven or working on each and every day. And really, these projects allow team members from different parts of the company, to work in smaller groups on these innovative projects and really expand their knowledge and growth experience. And so, when I look at how our company is involved, and I will say I've been here for a couple of years. I'm just about to complete my 30th year, so I've seen quite a bit of change, obviously from our company and just our industry is in general. But as our company is involved, so has our workforce, and we're now very, very heavy with engineers and IT employees, and with titles like cloud architects or data scientists, and really different titles than you would have seen several years ago.
Yeah, and let's be clear here for the benefit of those folks not in our industry. These people have options 24 hours a day, can go anywhere they want, and almost name their price because the demand for the talent and the folks that possess these skills greatly exceeds the supply. And the market responds accordingly. So the market does a dang good job, frankly, of ensuring that folks are compensated fairly, that they are able to work in an environment that they enjoy, that the company does institute good corporate governance and foments a culture that is enjoyable. You got to do that, or you can't survive.
No, you're exactly right, and and I will say, we are a very driven company, and quite frankly, we may not be for every employee, but with that, for the folks who are very success driven and have this aptitude to really grow their skill level and really bring their skills to us and really help lift what we're trying to do, it's really a great fit. And someone in HR told me a week or so ago that our employees rate us a 4.2 out of a 5-point scale on Glassdoor.
Yeah.
And that's higher than any other tech company in our category. And of course, for the viewers that maybe not don't understand Glassdoor is a website where current and former employees can anonymously go out and review your company, and so that's a very, very strong point. I think it's something that we, from a company standpoint, are very proud of.
Yeah, that's awesome. Congratulations. Let's pivot for a second, gentlemen. We had a rather unique weather situation here in Mississippi a couple of weeks ago. How did that impact you guys, and what sort of response did you mobilize?
Well, it's really interesting, and I know Dave probably wants to talk about this as well, but it's really interesting. Like I said, I've been here for a long time, and we've dealt with a lot of things, obviously ice storms back in the 90s and multiple hurricanes and tornadoes and everything else. But, I will say, and a big thank you to our network team for being prepared and really just managing in the way that they manage. It was a tall task last week. When you have, I don't know what it was, 150,000 people without electricity. Obviously, our cell sites on our wireless side, they have to have power, to produce and to work. And we're very dedicated trying to keep our customers, to have the ability to communicate, especially during times like that. And so, the planning that goes into place, and it's not just planning, it's building a plan and then really, practicing, doing test runs and just being prepared. But, to really manage the system, to proactively monitor the system, obviously they have to have power. Like I said, if they lost power, the vast majority of our sites have generators, backup generators, but those generators have to be fueled, and so trying to get out and manage that, staying on top of things using data analytics and really just some standard processes that we have in place. My hat's off to those guys because they worked extremely hard. We had a whole lot of field employees who are out there in that weather, dealing with everything. Really tough, but they did a terrific job, and we had very, very few customer impacting issues. I mean, in fact, I don't know that we had any complaints, which is just outstanding when you think about the type of weather that we had.
Yeah, absolutely. Can you guys hang around through the break?
Absolutely.
We'll be right back with a little bit more discussion from the good folks from C Spire, Dave Miller, Jim Rich. I know, guiding you through the middle of your day. Our guest is Dave Miller from the C Spire Roundtable. Well, we're calling it the C Spire Roundtable because we've also got Jim Richmond. Dave's in the studio. Jim Richmond, the Vice President of Corporate Communications, joining us via the phone. So wanted to hear some more about what we did during the ice storm. If there's anything else we didn't cover that, then I want to talk about how Mississippi has landed itself, at least some of our markets have landed in the list of the top 60 work-from-home U.S. cities, that being a thing now. Anything else we need to know about the response to the Snowmageddon, Ice-mageddon, whatever you want to call it, we had a couple of weeks ago? Well,
to me, it really, and Jim talked about this earlier, I think to me it really showed how much we continue to focus on our network and reliability and preparation, because there were so few, in fact, we don't know of any complaints that we had about the network. And, you and I were talking about this off the air. I came to Mississippi in 2005 when we had Hurricane Katrina, and I remember how bad that was. And I remember that C-Spire, even though a regional carrier, they were the only company that took it seriously, that got out there really quickly, got a big portion of the network restored, and got service going to people, because it doesn't matter who you are, what your name is, what your brand is. If you can't provide service when it's needed the most, forget it.
Yeah.
Why do you even have the service? So C-Spire really believes that. That's really part of our DNA. We really, really, really believe it's important that to have this service up, not just for consumers, but for businesses too.
And, one of the things I remember, Dave and Jim, is during Katrina, if you were certainly around at that time, Dave, the lack of a unified communications platform for emergency responders and law enforcement, and they all had, like 6 walkie-talkies hanging on their belt so they could stay in touch. And that we learned just what a problem that was, and how it was virtually impossible to coordinate the response efforts when you don't have a single communications platform. A lot of work's been done. We learned a lot, as we always do, hopefully, when we experience these sort of weather events and other catastrophes, that we learn from them, and we address those issues, and we improve so that that's not a problem going forward.
Yeah. No doubt. We definitely learned a lot, and, I think the way that we handled, even way back with Katrina, I think is just a good example of the way we try to prepare and be ready for things like that. And then, another big difference is that we're here, and
yeah,
we want to
right.
react extremely fast and really make a difference. And we know now people count on our service. I mean, they just count on our service. In fact, somebody told me last week that, they would rather have the cell service working than they would compared to their electricity, which
right.
is pretty crazy. But when you think about it, I guess that communication is certainly key.
Yeah, and folks need to understand those towers you see out there. You got the little hardened shelters underneath them. Those are jammed full of network electronics. That's what makes the network work. And they require power, so you got to have some way to keep those guys going if you lose line power. So a lot of thought, a lot of planning. And the industry, the IT industry, the telecommunications industry, I believe has gotten smarter and been innovative and creative to ensure uninterrupted service. And just as Jim said, that's just become our lifeblood, frankly, in society. We can't function without it anymore.
Absolutely. In fact, one of the things Jim mentioned earlier about how people have come to rely upon the wireless service. When I look back at what happened with Katrina and then moving forward, law enforcement, first responders are really critical whenever you have these kinds of emergencies, whether it's Snowmageddon, whether it's Hurricane Katrina, whether it's straight line winds or whatever that knock out commercial power. You've got to have the ability for law enforcement, for first responders, utilities to respond and get that service restored. And one of the things that we've been committed to, going all the way back to the creation of our company in 1988, is we really feel it's important for first responders to have the ability to get connected right away and to stay connected throughout so that they can do their jobs. And really, that's why we have wireless priority service. That's why we make it a priority for these law enforcement agencies, to first responders, anybody who's trying to get trying to protect the public, trying to make sure that services gets restored. That's why we do what we do, to make sure that they get the service that they need in order to do their jobs.
It's become a life and death matter, let's face it.
No question about it.
So let's pivot a little bit and talk about the work from home revolution that seems to be sweeping our society and country, and how that figures into you guys' plans. And then more importantly, about a few of the markets in Mississippi being named as the top for a work from home residence.
Well, I'll let Jim talk a little bit about what we've noticed from both a business perspective and a consumer's perspective, not just because of the lockdowns, but because of the way, people are concerned about catching the virus. So they want to make sure before that, and of course, a lot of this occurred before vaccines came out. And so we want to talk a little bit about how, what is the new normal? What does it look like? And, how did C-Spire play a role in it? So, Jim, why don't you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, be glad to, Dave. When COVID first hit last year, our business sales team spent a lot of time educating and working with business customers to really teach them how to go to a remote environment. And so we obviously sell tools and services that kind of help with that. But it really, for companies like us, we already had a handful of remote employees, and we're kind of somewhat used to it, but we did have to shift our whole workforce to working remotely. And so that was taking the accountants and other folks within our company who did not work remotely and put them in a remote environment. And so while we were taking care of our internal team, we also spent an enormous amount of time working with other companies and really trying to help them be successful in that new environment. And who knows really what the future holds from a COVID standpoint, but I do think things have changed. I think you'll see some businesses that, quite frankly, may not go back to any sort of a normal work office situation. You'll have some that will go totally back into in-house. But the big thing is that we've realized that we can be successful working remotely, and I think to date, we've been pretty successful with that endeavor.
Yeah, it's amazing how such a short period. I think this was coming regardless. I just think that the pandemic sort of accelerated it. From a personal perspective, just my personal opinion, not a big fan of it. I think there's so much to be gained from being around your colleagues and your peers and your teammates in the same facility, under the same roof. That's beyond, I think, comparison to working from home. I wouldn't want to do it. I like the idea of getting up and putting my clothes on and brushing my teeth, combing my hair, driving to the office, if you will. I just think there's something to be said for that, but that's just an opinion. And I know everybody will kind of figure out what the best model is for them. And what's kind of amazing to me, and I know you guys to a great extent can share the same experiences, we spent, it seems like, years trying to persuade people that these collaborative technologies really did have some value. And now folks can't live without it. But we used to say, hey, you really ought to think about using this. It's just how rapidly that pivoted.
It really has. In fact, I want to go back to something that Jim mentioned on the consumer side. Again, it's part of who we are as a company. It's part of our DNA. We move really quickly. But, on the consumer side, we whitelisted a lot of, thousands of websites because kids were being told, hey, you can't go back to school. You got to work from home. We did a lot to make sure that our network was capable of supporting telehealth and telemedicine services, because that was something. We've rolled out, and now I think we offer it in over 20 markets in Mississippi. We've got, gigabit speed internet, which is really important when you're talking about entertainment from home, because theaters were closed, right? So now you've got to do everything over, live streaming TV or streaming services. So, we did all of that, and we did it very quickly. And I think that's part of what, customers expect when there is an emergency, when there is a change in the environment. They want to pivot quickly, and the companies that can respond quickly and the companies that can do those things very quickly are going to be successful.
Yeah. Absolutely. And so the cool thing is we're using technology to give people more choices, both consumers and commercial organizations, and they can figure out the model that best works for them. The network is there, the infrastructure and the technology is there, and with the major investment you guys are making in 5G, that just makes that even more achievable. So that's the best part about this, in my view.
Absolutely.
Gentlemen, thanks so much for joining us today. It's been a great discussion. Congratulations on all the success and all the awards. Appreciate you guys being a good commercial citizen for the state of Mississippi.